Hold on, we are being joined by Enes Opuni. He's a UK-based journalist. Of course, Michael Porter also will be joining us later on the phone via Zoom, actually. So there's Michael, and there is Enes Opuni, who are joining us from the UK. Guys, thank you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
For having me. Thanks for having us.
Well, let's start off with you. Michael, former player of Bolton Wanderers, I'm sure there is a lot of tradition to Bolton Wanderers, and of course to some of these teams of that level who would always want to play at the highest level, that's club competition. What's your initial thoughts of the ESL, that's the European Super League, which seems to have founding clubs playing permanently in Europe, that's in the elite division of European football?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, but in all honesty, you know, we're talking now about the evolution of football. Football will never remain still. I remember when I played in my Bolton Wanderers day, late 70s, early 80s, we played in something called English League Division 1. And in those days, we had 11 players and one substitute only. The balls were a lot heavier. Fast forward 20 years, we now have the English Premier League. When the English Premier League was mooted that it was going to replace English League Division 1, everybody was aghast, everybody was worried. Everybody thought, oh, this is a wrong move, just like we are today with the European Super League. But it's evolvement, it's the evolvement of the game, and you can't stop it. And you see, the problem is now football is a business more than a sport. It's all about generating cash and income and profitability. The fans actually are last in the queue at the moment, which is rather sad, but this is the way it's going. And you see, UEFA and FIFA, although they're against all this, those same bodies have been accused recently of corruption. There's been instances of both UEFA board members and FIFA board members being disciplined and expelled from the game, you know, and some of the clubs, they've got fed up with all of this, you know, FIFA and UEFA dictating what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And as a result of this, you know, the top 12, and it will be the top 20 teams in Europe, have come forward and said, look, we're going to do things a little bit better. You know, we're the top teams, and we should have more of a say of what's going on across Europe. And that's exactly what they've done. We have a conglomerate of 12 teams initially, which will go to 20, and they formed the European Super League. I mean, if you look at boxing used to have one body that used to control boxing, but now it has 4 bodies: the IBF, the WBA, the WBC, the WBO. You know, and is this the start of something for football, where you know the grip of FIFA and UEFA around the game is slowly slipping away? You know, and it's a supply and demand. This new league is funded by Wall Street. JP Morgan are the backers of this. You know, so it's funded by America. And you know, and UEFA, you know, 51% of their income comes from the Champions League. So it's no wonder they're worried, because if these teams take away the Champions League, you know, it's going to leave UEFA cash strapped, and so what they're frightened of is the power, the money, and the greed that they've got. And but you could also say the new conglomerate are also after the power, the money, and the greed that goes with it. So it's a vicious circle. But it's all about, the bottom line of this is all about money. It's all about cash, and you know, and the European League could generate hundreds of millions of dollars annually. You know, TV rights alone, and social media, gambling, subscription rights. They'll do it in a very different way to what UEFA and FIFA's doing. But all of this will leave the mark on what we currently have. The English Premier League will be decimated. Top 6 teams gone. Probably the same in Spain. But then again, the fans, you know, if you're not a Real Madrid supporter or a Barcelona supporter or a Bayern Munich supporter or a Liverpool or a Man United or Man City supporter, you get bored year in, year out of the same teams winning the league, winning the cups, winning everything because they have more money. At least this gives us the option of a level playing field where you've got the biggest teams probably in the world playing against each other in a wonderful Super League.
Okay, Michael, let me get Ernest's thought on this. And you think that standstill, that should be the center of discussion, not necessarily about offsetting debt and sustaining the game through money?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, you want to support your local team. Fans are very important to any team, of course, and there's a lot of history attached with any football club across England, throughout the world. Each club has its own unique history and following and fan base and everything else. And you know, we should never ever forget the fans. But remember, you know, when you look at when you look at the business operation of a football club, and this is very important these days, you know, the sources of income come from match day attendance, so that's your crowd paying to go in. A third come from TV and media, and a third come through sponsorship. So fan base is one thing, but also, you know, a club to survive in these days needs to also build up its sponsorship and its TV and media. Remember, the game has been starved for 12 months, no attendances for 12 months. That's leaving a huge hole in the coffers of some clubs, and in fact it's the bigger clubs that are feeling the pinch, because the bigger clubs have bigger overheads to pay.
Yeah.
So I think the pandemic has also had you know, a big part to play in the decision of the European Super League to come together as an organisation to move forward. But yeah, you know, the principles of football, you know, when I played, it was about, you know, playing for your team, doing well, having a successful side, making sure your fans are happy. But unfortunately, we've moved on. We've moved on in the world, and as I said before, you know, when I played at Bolton, most of the players were British. You know, we only had one substitute. The owners of the club were local and regional, but now it's a multicultural, multi-global investment sport. And you know, the colleagues in the studio there mentioned about the American business ethics, and they're exactly right. You know that, you know, although they will be interested in fans, if you look at the top 10 on their list, fans would not appear in the top 6. You might get them as a consideration as number 0.9 or number 10. You know, and unfortunately, these three words keep going around in my mind: power, money, and greed. And I can't quite get away from it. But it's economies of scale. Even when I played football, the better player would get more money, you know. And if you were a better player, your salary would be more than the next person. And what you're going to have now with this European Super League is elite sportsmen being paid elite wages by elite clubs who are receiving elite money through their own governance of a new league. And you can see that it's going to starve to a certain extent. It'll be like a brain drain in the employment market. Most of the players, you know, and of course these big clubs will need bigger squads. You know, there'll be a brain drain. You know, these big clubs will cherry pick all the top players around the world to feed the fire, and that will leave, you know, if you look at the English Premier League, you know, I can't remember, is it 22 teams in the league, you know, minus 6, let's say that's 16. They have a pyramid system in England, which is very important and very integral, and that should not be dismantled. But at the moment, there's only 3 teams coming up from the Championship into the Premier League. You know, how's that going to be managed? You know, so you know, there's a whole lot of issues, but you can't stop change. You know, you cannot stop change. We look at it in technology. We look at it in all sorts of life. Sport's the same. You know, it's the evolution of football.
Yeah. Let me get